The letter still trembled in my hand when I slipped it under her door. The paper smelled of cheap ink, still wet, because I had written it in haste. I thought my daughter would read every word with care. Instead, through the door, I heard her laugh with her fiancé. "My father is a burden," she said, her voice sharp, almost joyful. And then his deeper voice answered, "By Friday morning, he'll either sign the deed or lose everything." My knees went weak at that sentence, as if the floor opened beneath me. The deed, our small house, the place I built brick by brick with hands stained by grease, was their object. They wanted it as part of her marriage gift. I gripped the letter harder, smudging the words with my thumb. "Grease on his hands, grease on his soul," he joked, and she laughed louder. My ears rang with shame. By Friday 10 a.m., I had to decide, give up the deed or be cut off completely. I leaned against the wall, trying to steady my breath. The paint smelled of old dampness, the hallway too quiet except for their cruel laughter inside. My daughter, my only daughter, turned me into a caricature to please him. Was I really only a dirty mechanic to her? The deadline pounded in my head like the tick of a clock. I thought of my late wife, her soft hands covered in flour, whispering, "Protect the house. It's all we have." How could I face her memory now? I pushed myself away from the door and walked back to my room. The wooden floor creaked under my weight, each step like a betrayal of my pride. On the bed lay the torn envelope I had prepared earlier. One page was missing. Without it, my words looked weak, almost desperate. Would they use this against me? I searched the floor, under the chair, even inside the wastebasket. But the missing sheet was gone. My chest tightened. Had they already seen it? My son Daniel entered silently, his socks dragging on the floor. He didn't look at me directly. "Dad, don't make things harder," he whispered, his hands trembling as he placed a cup of tea on my nightstand. Steam rose, smelling faintly of mint, but I couldn't taste anything. I asked him, "Did you see a page from my letter?" His eyes darted toward the hallway, then back down. He shook his head, but the hesitation betrayed him. What was he hiding? I closed my eyes and thought of all those nights I stayed awake repairing old engines to pay their school fees. Every bolt turned, every cut on my hand was for them. My body ached, but I felt a strange heat rising in my chest. How easily they mocked me now. Was my sacrifice invisible? The thought sliced deeper than any insult. Daniel's silence screamed louder than his words. The next morning, the air was heavy with the smell of burned toast. I found my daughter at the kitchen table, her phone glowing in her hand. She didn't greet me. Instead, she shoved a folded paper across the table. "You forgot this," she said coldly. It was the missing page. The corner was wrinkled, as if clenched too long in someone's fist. My heart raced. Who had read it first, her or her fiancé? I tried to speak, but her voice cut me short. "It's simple, Dad. Friday morning, 10 sharp. Sign or don't bother coming." She looked past me, as though I were just another piece of furniture. The clock on the wall ticked louder, each second like a hammer against my chest. Could I survive their contempt one more day? I carried the paper back to my room, the edges soft from handling, the words blurred under my eyes. Was my letter even worth reading now, or just another excuse for them to laugh? The smell of coffee drifted from the kitchen, but it no longer brought comfort. My throat burned with unshed words. Would I beg, or would I fight? I thought of my granddaughter Anna, her small hands once clinging to my arm. She used to say, "Grandpa smells like iron, and I love it." That memory flickered like a dying candle. If I gave up the deed, what would I pass on to her? Nothing but ashes and humiliation. But if I refused, would they cut her from me too? The phone rang sharply, breaking my thoughts. I picked it up with shaky fingers. On the other end, his voice, smooth, arrogant, echoed, "Friday, 10 o'clock. Don't be late." The line went dead. The silence after was worse than the call itself. My hand shook so badly I almost dropped the receiver. What kind of man threatens his future father-in-law like a debtor? I stared at the deed locked inside my drawer. The key was cold in my hand, metal biting into my palm. The drawer creaked when I pulled it open. The papers inside smelled faintly of tobacco from years ago, when my wife kept them safe. Now they felt heavier than iron, heavier than all the engines I had lifted in my life. Could a single signature erase decades of labor? Daniel appeared again at the doorway, his voice low. "Dad, maybe it's better this way." He wouldn't meet my eyes. My heart clenched at his cowardice. "Better for whom?" I asked, but he slipped away without answering. His steps faded, leaving me with only the sound of the ticking clock. A strange thought crossed my mind. Had they all agreed on this behind my back? I folded the letter, placed it inside the envelope again, and sealed it. The glue stuck unevenly, the paper rough under my fingers. This small object, this fragile sheet, carried the weight of my dignity. Yet, I wondered, would anyone even care about my words? Or had they already decided my fate in whispers and secret glances? The night stretched long, shadows moving on the ceiling. My mind replayed their laughter, sharp as knives. "Dirty mechanic," she had called me. The phrase looped endlessly, cutting deeper each time. I pressed my pillow over my ears, but it couldn't drown out the echo. Sleep never came. My heart pounded until dawn. By morning, I found the kitchen empty. A single mug sat on the counter, lipstick smudged along its rim. My daughter's. The smell of stale coffee clung to the air. She had left early, probably with him. Where were they now, plotting their next demand? My chest burned with helpless anger. I walked outside to the small yard. The grass was damp with dew, shining under the first light. My hands ached as I clenched them into fists. Every blade of grass reminded me of my wife's laughter when we planted the flowers here. Was all that memory now just currency for their greed? I couldn't breathe inside the house anymore, so I sat on the porch. A stray cat rubbed against my boots, its fur rough but warm. I stroked it absent-mindedly, wondering why even an animal showed more loyalty than my own blood. Was I truly alone in this fight? I opened the newspaper left at the door. My eyes skimmed the headlines, but one date jumped out. Friday, September 14th. The day marked in red in my mind. 2 days left. Just 2. My stomach tightened as if a rope had been pulled inside me. The phone buzzed again, vibrating against the wooden table. A message this time. "Don't be late. 10 a.m. Friday. Bring the deed." My daughter's number. No signature, no warmth, just an order. My throat closed with rage. Was I only a tool to them now? I wanted to rip the message apart, but it was only light on a screen. I slammed the phone down, the crack echoing through the empty house. For a moment, I thought the glass had shattered, but it held. My reflection stared back at me, older, worn, but still alive. Was that enough to fight with? I thought again of Anna. Her laugh, so different from her mother's sharp cruelty. Sweet, innocent, full of trust. Could I really lose her if I resisted? That fear stabbed deeper than the threat of losing the house. Blood ties were cutting me apart. The sun dipped low, painting the walls orange. My shadow stretched long across the yard. I felt like a ghost haunting my own life. Yet, inside my pocket, the key to the drawer pressed against my thigh. Hard, unyielding, reminding me the deed still existed. Did that mean hope still existed too? I whispered to myself, "Hold on, just hold on." But even I didn't know what I was holding on to. Dignity, memory, or illusion. The night wind carried the faint smell of smoke from a neighbor's chimney. It stung my eyes, or maybe those were just tears. And then, just before midnight, came the sound that froze me. 3 sharp knocks on the door. Slow, deliberate, each one echoing through the empty rooms. I rose, my knees shaking, the letter still clutched in my hand. Who waited outside at this hour? The 3 knocks echoed like gunshots through the silence of my house. I hesitated before opening the door, my hand trembling on the cold brass handle. When I pulled it back, no one stood there. Only the faint smell of cigarette smoke lingered in the night air. On the ground, half folded, lay the missing page from my letter. Its corner was wet from dew, the ink smudged where my words once tried to hold dignity. I bent to pick it up, my knees cracking, heart racing. How had it gotten here? Had someone slipped it under the door after reading it? I scanned the street, empty, under the yellow glow of the street lamp. A shadow moved far away, maybe a man walking quickly. But I couldn't tell. The page felt damp and cold in my hand, the words blurred, but still mine. I carried it inside, closed the door, and slid the bolt shut with a harsh scrape. My chest felt tighter now, as though the walls pressed closer. I spread the paper on the table, smoothing its wrinkles. Some sentences were unreadable, but one line remained sharp. "I will not crawl." That line survived like a stubborn ember. My hand shook as I read it again and again. The next morning, my daughter didn't look at me. She tossed her hair back, her eyes fixed on her phone, and pushed a small envelope across the table. "Dad, this is your last chance. Saturday, 10 a.m. Don't embarrass us." Her words were clipped like a judge passing a sentence. The envelope smelled faintly of her perfume, sweet but nauseating to me. I opened it. Inside was the official wedding invitation, embossed letters shining faintly. Beneath it, in neat handwriting, one sentence in red ink: deed or absence. My throat closed. The words cut sharper than any insult. A threat hidden inside a celebration. Did she think I was blind to her cruelty? Daniel entered just then, his footsteps hesitant. He glanced at the table, then quickly away. "Dad," he murmured, "just don't fight them." His voice was soft, but his fingers drummed nervously against his leg. I snapped, "Is that what you want? For me to surrender?" He lowered his head, whispering, "It's better than losing everything." And then he left, silence heavy in his wake. The house seemed smaller after that exchange. Every creak of the floorboards reminded me of arguments unspoken. I stared at the invitation until my eyes blurred. How could a celebration of love carry so much poison? I wanted to tear it apart, but I didn't. Instead, I placed it on the mantel, its presence like a blade over my neck. That night, I couldn't sleep. The clock ticked, loud and merciless. I lay awake, the paper page beside me, the torn edges rough under my fingertips. I thought of my wife again, how she saved coins in jars, how she sewed patches on my shirts so the children could study. All of it to give them more than we had. Did it mean nothing? My chest ached with betrayal. A strange sound woke me from half sleep. The shuffle of footsteps in the hallway. I rose, heart pounding, and followed the sound. Nothing. Only the faint draft from an open window. On the floor near the window, a footprint in dust. Too small for Daniel, too sharp for accident. Someone had been inside. I closed the window, the wooden frame creaking as I forced the latch. The smell of the night air lingered, damp and earthy. I stood still, listening. Nothing now, but I knew. They wanted me afraid. They wanted me broken. My daughter's fiancé. Was he behind this? His laughter still echoed in my ears, mocking, commanding. The next day, I confronted my daughter in the kitchen. "Did you read my letter?" I asked. She didn't look up from the bread she sliced. "Of course," she said flatly, and so did he. The knife hit the board sharply, slice after slice, as if punctuating her cruelty. She looked up finally, her eyes cold. "It made you sound weak, Dad. That's why he laughed." Her words crushed me, but I forced myself to stand tall. "Weak?" I whispered. "Weak is selling your father's pride for a seat at a table." She shrugged, unbothered. "This is the world now. Pride doesn't pay the bills." Then she walked away, leaving the bread half sliced, the knife glinting under the morning sun. I leaned against the counter, breath heavy, the smell of fresh bread mixed with something sour in my throat. Pride doesn't pay the bills? Was that what she believed? Did my sacrifices count for nothing? I pressed my hand to the table, the wood sticky under my palm, and whispered to myself, "Don't break, not yet." That evening, Daniel returned with a folder in his hands. He placed it on my lap without a word. Inside were receipts, bank slips, documents I had never seen. "They already arranged everything," he said softly, eyes lowered. "All they need is your signature." My pulse quickened as I flipped through the papers. Some bore my forged signature already. My chest exploded with fury. I slammed the folder shut, the sound echoing through the room. "Who did this?" I demanded. Daniel's silence was louder than any answer. He rubbed his hands together, his nails dirty, his skin pale. Finally, he whispered, "It was him." The admission hung heavy in the air. So the fiancé was already signing away my life before I agreed. My breath came in short bursts. I wanted to tear those papers apart, to burn them. Instead, I placed them back in the folder. Not yet. Destroying them now would leave me with nothing. I needed proof. My hand steadied with this thought, a strange strength filling me. If I held on to them, maybe I could fight. I hid the folder under the old floorboard in my room, where the wood was loose from years of weight. The plank lifted with a groan, the smell of dust rushing out. I slid the folder inside, then pressed the board back down. For the first time in days, I felt a thin sliver of hope. Maybe I wasn't powerless, but hope is fragile. That night, as I sat in the dim kitchen sipping tea gone cold, my phone buzzed. A message, Friday, 10 sharp. Or lose everything, no excuses. My daughter's number again? My stomach twisted. They wouldn't stop. Each day their deadline cut closer. Could I really last until then? The air grew heavy. The lights flickered. I felt watched even inside my home. I checked the locks twice, 3 times. Still, sleep wouldn't come. My heart hammered, my chest tight. I sat in the dark, waiting, listening. Every creak, every gust of wind made me flinch. Near midnight, the front gate clanged loudly, metal against metal. I rushed to the window, pulling the curtain aside. Nothing but the empty street. My breath fogged the glass, my reflection pale and weary. My fists tightened. How long would they torment me this way? The silence after the clang was worse than the noise. I returned to my chair, sat heavily, and pressed my palms against my face. My skin felt rough. My eyes burned. I muttered to myself, "Hold on, just hold on." But my voice sounded broken, foreign. The clock struck 2, its chime hollow in the night. I rose to drink water, the floor cold under my bare feet. As I lifted the glass, I noticed something new on the table, the envelope, the wedding invitation. Except now, a line had been added in black ink. "This is final." My hand shook so badly the glass slipped and shattered, water spreading across the floor. I stared at the envelope, the ink still glistening as though freshly written. Who had been inside my locked house again? The glass shards caught the moonlight, glittering like knives. My chest heaved, fear and rage wrestling inside me. I reached for the envelope, but my fingers froze halfway. Because just then, from the darkness of the hallway came a sound, a single whisper, low and chilling. "Sign it, Dad." The whisper still rang in my ears when I turned toward the hallway. My breath caught, my chest heavy, but no one stood there. Only the faint creak of the old floorboards, as though someone had just stepped away. I clutched the envelope tighter, the paper dampening with the sweat of my hands. Fear crawled up my spine like cold fingers. Was it Daniel? Or had my mind betrayed me with ghosts? At breakfast, Daniel sat across from me, hunched over his coffee mug. The steam rose between us, bitter and sharp, the smell filling the kitchen. He didn't meet my eyes. His silence screamed louder than words. My daughter's chair stood empty, a symbol of her contempt. I stirred my cup, though it was already black, my spoon clinking too loud against the porcelain. Finally, Daniel spoke, his voice low, almost breaking. "Dad, she doesn't mean it." His fingers trembled on the mug's handle, tapping against the ceramic. The sound was small, but it carried his fear. I stared at him, searching for truth, but his eyes darted away again. If she didn't mean it, why did she repeat it? Why was the deadline carved so sharply into my chest? I noticed something fall from his jacket pocket, a small slip of paper half hidden by his knee. My eyes locked onto it, white, with golden edges, an invitation card, the same embossed letters as the one I had received. I reached for it, but Daniel snatched it quickly, his hand shaking. "It's nothing," he said, but his voice cracked, betraying him. "Whose invitation is that?" I asked sharply. He froze, his knuckles pale as he clenched the card. He whispered, "Just a spare." His lips moved fast, but his eyes told another story. That wasn't just an invitation, it carried something more. A note, perhaps, a condition. My gut twisted with dread. He left the table in silence, his chair scraping harshly against the floor. I sat still, the smell of burned toast lingering from the toaster. My heart pounded. If Daniel was hiding something, whose side was he on? My daughter's? The fiancé's? Or was he too weak to choose? The question haunted me. Later, I searched the kitchen trash. Crumpled napkins, coffee grounds, and there, hidden beneath, another slip of paper. Torn, but legible. My daughter's handwriting, sharp and rushed. "Remind him of the house. He'll fold when the time comes." My stomach dropped. They used Daniel as their messenger, their pawn. I pressed the note to my forehead, the ink smearing faintly onto my skin. My hands trembled. Could I even trust my own son? Or had greed consumed him too? The betrayal cut deeper than knives. I placed the note in my pocket, close to my heart, as if keeping the wound near made me stronger. That evening, Daniel returned, avoiding me. He stood by the doorframe, shifting his weight from foot to foot. His voice was soft, but urgent. "Dad, please, don't make this worse. They'll take more than the house if you resist." His words chilled me. More than the house? What else did they threaten? My freedom? My name? I tried to steady my breath. "Daniel, are you with me or with them?" My question hung heavy in the air. His face tightened, lips pressed thin. He didn't answer. He only lowered his gaze like a boy caught stealing. Then he turned, walking away. His silence was an answer sharper than words. I sat in the dim living room, the ticking clock louder with every second. My chest ached as I thought of nights I skipped sleep, fixing engines until dawn so Daniel and his sister could eat, could study. My blood, my sweat, poured into their future. And now he turned his back, letting them strip me bare. The next morning, The air was thick with the smell of rain. Drops tapped against the window like impatient fingers. I found Daniel already dressed, his jacket zipped, his eyes tired. He held the invitation in his hand, but something else peeked out. A folded receipt. I recognized the logo of the bank. My blood ran cold. He slipped the receipt into his pocket quickly, too quickly. My voice broke the silence. "What did you sign, Daniel?" His shoulders stiffened, but he didn't answer. Instead, he muttered, "It's done. Just accept it." His words slammed against me like stones. Done. What was done? My knees weakened, and I gripped the chair for support. The fabric rough under my palm grounded me. I asked again, louder now, "What did you sign?" He flinched, eyes darting toward the door. "I had no choice," he whispered. My rage rose, but so did helplessness. Was my son already bound to them by ink and paper? I followed him outside, rain soaking my shirt in seconds. He hurried down the street, shoulders hunched, his steps uneven. "Daniel!" I shouted. But he didn't turn. My voice drowned in the rain's roar. I stood there, water dripping from my hair, watching my son vanish into the gray distance. The storm outside matched the one inside me. Back inside, I opened the drawer with the deed again. The paper looked fragile now, thin as old skin. My hand shook as I touched it. This was the heart of their plan, the object they wanted. If Daniel had already tied it to them, what chance did I have? The ink of my name could be twisted, forged, stolen. A faint sound drew my attention. The mailbox clanged shut. I rushed to the door, heart hammering. Inside the box lay a sealed envelope, edges damp from the rain. No return address. My fingers tore it open. Inside, a single sheet. Printed words in bold. "Friday, Naha 58. Sheriff at the door if you delay." My chest tightened so hard I thought I might collapse. The deadline had moved. Not 10 anymore. 9:58, 2 minutes stolen from me, just to show their power. My head spun. Would they really summon the sheriff? Would they shame me publicly, drag me into the street as a debtor? The paper smelled faintly of fresh ink, as if printed only minutes ago. My hand shook as I clutched it. My dignity was hanging by seconds now. I thought of my wife again, her voice urging me to be strong, but strength felt like smoke in my hands. Slipping away, I pressed the note flat on the table, the words glaring at me like eyes. My mind swirled with doubts. Could I still fight? Could I still protect what little I had? Or was this the moment I finally broke? I lowered my head into my hands, breath shallow, chest burning, and then, from the hallway, a sound cut through the storm of my thoughts, the sharp snap of wood. I lifted my head. The loose floorboard in my room, the one hiding the folder, had shifted on its own. Someone had touched it. Someone had found my proof. My legs moved before I thought. I rushed down the hallway, heart pounding, the smell of damp wood heavy in my nose. My door was ajar, swaying gently. I pushed it open, every nerve burning with dread. The board lay lifted, the dust disturbed. The folder was gone. The empty space beneath the floorboard hit me harder than any fist. My knees buckled, and I gripped the doorframe for balance. Dust still floated in the air, disturbed, carrying that dry, bitter smell of old wood. The folder was gone, my one piece of proof. Without it, I was naked in front of them. I dropped to the floor, scraping my hands on the rough plank as I searched like a desperate man. Nothing, not a single slip remained. My chest tightened, and a low sound escaped my throat, half groan, half prayer. Who had taken it? Daniel? My daughter? Or him, the shadow already circling this house like a vulture? I heard a soft sob from the hallway. My daughter stood there, eyes red, hair tangled, as if she hadn't slept. She clutched the wall with white knuckles. For a moment, she looked like a child again, not the cold woman from yesterday. "Dad, it was him who—" Her words broke, spilling like a crack in stone. But before she could finish, the door creaked open behind her. He walked in, the fiancé, wearing that smug grin he always carried. The air shifted with his cologne, heavy and suffocating, a mixture of musk and alcohol. He didn't look at me first. He touched her shoulder, firm, like possession. She flinched, but didn't resist. "Breakfast smells poor in here," he said, smirking as his eyes swept the room. His tone dripped with disdain, turning even silence into mockery. My fists clenched, nails digging into my palms. I wanted to shout, but the sight of my daughter shrinking beneath his hand froze my tongue. She lowered her gaze, her lips trembling, and the words she'd begun vanished into air. He guided her away with a slight push, her body small against his frame. The sound of their footsteps receded, leaving only my breath and the ticking of the clock. Her whisper had died, cut short before the truth escaped. My heart pounded, a question roaring louder than blood. What was she trying to confess? I staggered to the chair and sat heavily. The wood groaned under me, sharp against my back. My hands shook on my knees. That brief spark in her eyes, that flicker of fear, it meant something. She wanted to warn me. But of what? My mind churned, chasing her half-words like shadows. I remembered her voice when she was small, whispering secrets to me in the dark. Don't tell Mom, but I broke the vase. Innocent then, honest. Now her whisper was crushed beneath his hand. Did he own her so completely she couldn't even speak to me? The thought burned through me. I rose, pacing the room, my boots striking the floor with dull thuds. My mind repeated her half-sentence again and again. It was him who what? Stole the folder? Forged the papers? Broke her spirit? Each possibility cut deeper than the last. The phone rang suddenly, jolting me. I grabbed it, my hand slick with sweat. On the other end, silence. Just the faint static of an open line. "Who is this?" I demanded, my voice cracking. A soft chuckle answered, low and cruel, before the line went dead. My skin prickled. I stared at the receiver, the plastic cold against my ear. That laugh wasn't my imagination. He was playing with me, taunting me, cutting at the edges of my sanity. My daughter's half-confession felt heavier now, a warning drowned by his shadow. That night, I barely touched my food. The stew cooled untouched, the smell of onions turning sour in the air. Daniel sat across from me, restless, fidgeting with his fork. He wouldn't meet my eyes. When I finally asked, "Did you take the folder?" his face drained of color, but he didn't answer. Silence was his betrayal. I slammed my fist against the table, the plates rattling. "You think I'm blind?" I shouted. His shoulders hunched and his lips parted, but no words came. He rose, walked away without looking back, his steps heavy. My anger drained, leaving only emptiness in its place. Later, alone, I searched my daughter's room. Her perfume lingered faintly, sweet and cloying, mixed with the smell of paper and ink. In her drawer, beneath scarves, I found another slip of paper. Torn edges, faint writing. "Don't trust him." My breath caught. Was this for me, or for herself? I held the note to the light. The ink blurred as if smudged by tears. My heart twisted. She was reaching out, but fear gagged her voice. That whisper, cut short at the doorway, returned sharper in my memory. What had he done to her? The walls felt too close, the air too heavy. I stepped outside into the night. The air was cool, smelling of wet earth after the earlier rain. The silence pressed on me, broken only by the faint hum of a car in the distance. My chest rose and fell in uneven rhythm. How much more could I take? Back inside, I checked the loose floorboard again, running my fingers over the gap. Empty still. The absence screamed at me louder than words. Proof stolen, confession silenced, son compromised. My world was shrinking, piece by piece. I sat in the dark living room, listening. Each creak of the house felt alive, each shadow stretched too long. I thought of my wife again, her whisper steady, always pushing me forward. She would have told me not to surrender, but she wasn't here. Only her absence pressed against me like a stone. I tried to pray, but the words stumbled. My chest heaved with half-sentences, broken like my daughter's whisper. Faith faltered, fear sharpened. Still, a spark remained. She had tried. Even silenced, she had tried to tell me something. That meant she wasn't fully lost to him yet. The clock struck midnight, its chime hollow and cold. I lifted my head, eyes burning, and swore softly. I'll find the truth, whatever it costs. The room echoed with my vow, though no one was there to hear it. Then, just as I rose to blow out the lamp, a new sound reached me, faint but clear. A knock at the back door. 3 slow, deliberate taps. My breath caught. Who could it be at this hour? And why that door? The one we never used. The 3 knocks at the back door still rattled in my chest. I froze in the living room, listening to the silence after them. My heart hammered as if the walls themselves could hear it. When I finally opened the door, the night was empty. Only the damp smell of earth and the rustle of leaves greeted me. No figure in sight, no explanation. But a cold draft slipped past me into the house, chilling my skin. I shut the door quickly, sliding the bolt into place with a loud scrape. My hands were clammy, shaking as I pressed them against the wood. Whoever knocked wanted me afraid, unbalanced, and it was working. I paced the kitchen, restless, the ticking clock cutting into my ears. My daughter's unfinished words. It was him who wouldn't leave me alone. I climbed the stairs slowly, each step groaning beneath my weight. The smell of dust grew stronger as I reached the attic door, faintly sweet, almost choking. Something urged me upward, a whisper from memory. My wife had always hidden things in that attic, always keeping her secrets tucked away where no one looked. Maybe she had left me something too. The ladder creaked under my feet, the wood rough against my palms as I pulled myself up. The attic was dark, lit only by a thin line of moonlight through the small window. Dust swirled in the beam, floating like restless ghosts. I coughed as the dry air filled my lungs. My eyes scanned the clutter, old boxes, broken chairs, a rusted trunk. And then I saw it, a small wooden box in the far corner, half covered by a yellowed sheet. My heart lurched. The box had been my wife's, one she never let anyone touch. The sight of it now, waiting in the silence, filled me with both dread and hope. I pulled the sheet aside. Dust puffed up, sharp and bitter in my nose, making my eyes water. The box was scratched, its hinges tarnished with green. I lifted it gently, its weight heavier than it looked. My hands trembled as I carried it to the beam of moonlight. The wood felt cold, the carvings faint under my fingers. It was locked. The small brass lock dangled, rusted, but still firm. I tugged once, twice. It didn't budge. Frustration burned in my chest. After everything stolen, after every whisper cut short, now even this box denied me. I almost hurled it across the room. Instead, I set it down, breathing hard. I searched the attic for a key. My hands dug through jars of nails, through tins filled with screws, through cracked picture frames. Nothing. My shirt stuck to my back from the effort. And then, in a cracked teacup, I found it. A small brass key, worn smooth from years of use. My breath caught as I held it up to the light. I knelt by the box, the wood creaking under my knees. The key slid in, stiff but willing. With a twist, the lock gave way, the click echoing like a gunshot in the still attic. I lifted the lid slowly, the hinges squealing, and a smell of old paper and dried flowers drifted out. My throat tightened. Inside lay photographs, brittle and curling at the edges. My wife's handwriting marked the backs in faded ink. Dates, names, places. I touched them gently, her voice echoing in my memory with each one. Beneath the photos lay an envelope, yellowed, sealed with wax that had cracked with time. My name was written across it in her hand. I sat back, tears stinging my eyes. My name. She had left me something even after death. My fingers shook as I broke the wax and pulled out the folded paper. The scent of ink and time rose from it, sharp and unmistakable. My heart pounded as I unfolded her letter. Her words flowed across the page, steady and deliberate. She wrote of love, of fear, of secrets she kept for the sake of the children. She wrote of debts she never told me about, of bargains whispered when I was asleep. My eyes blurred as I read, but one line cut clear. I rewrote my will in secret. The attic seemed to spin around me. A secret will? My wife, always quiet, always careful. What had she left behind? My breath came in shallow bursts. I folded the letter back carefully, hands damp with sweat. A second envelope lay at the bottom of the box, thicker, sealed tighter. My pulse quickened. I pulled it out. The paper was heavier, official, stamped with a notary's mark faintly visible even in the dim light. My chest clenched as I realized what I held. This was no mere letter. This was the will itself. She had hidden it here, away from them, away from greedy hands. The wood groaned suddenly above me, breaking the silence. I froze, clutching the envelope to my chest. Footsteps, faint but real, coming from the floor below. My skin prickled. Someone else was in the house. I held my breath, the envelope trembling in my grip. The steps grew louder, then paused. My daughter's voice floated up, soft, uncertain. "Dad, are you up there?" My heart twisted. Was she alone, or was he with her? I clutched the will tighter, the paper rough against my fingers. Could I trust her now, after her silence at the kitchen table? I hesitated, then slid the envelope into my shirt, close to my chest. The paper crinkled against my skin. I lowered the box back into its corner and pulled the sheet over it again. My movements rushed, clumsy. Dust swirled as I backed toward the ladder. Her footsteps creaked on the stairs. I hurried down, the ladder rattling under my weight. She stood at the bottom, her eyes wide, her lips pressed tight. She glanced at my chest, as if she knew I carried something hidden. My throat tightened. "Were you looking for something?" she asked. Her voice was steady, but her hands twisted in the hem of her shirt. She wanted to know, but she feared the answer. My heart pounded as I tried to read her face. Was she an ally now, or still under his shadow? I didn't answer. Instead, I brushed past her, clutching the will beneath my shirt. Her perfume lingered in the air, sweet but sour to me now. My hand shook as I locked myself in my room, sliding the bolt shut. The envelope felt like fire against my skin. I sat on the bed, pulling it out again. My wife's will, hidden for years, now in my hands. The paper was yellowed, the ink faded, but her name stood clear at the bottom. My throat closed with emotion. This could change everything, or it could destroy what little remained. And just as I steadied myself to read it fully, a loud knock shook my door. Not the front, not the back. My own bedroom door. "Dad!" Daniel's voice came, sharp this time, almost desperate. "Open up! I need to see what you found." Daniel's knock shook the door again, rattling the frame. My pulse raced as I pressed the envelope tighter against my chest. His voice sharpened. "Dad, don't hide things from me. We need to handle this together." My breath hitched. Together. Did that mean with me or with them? His tone carried urgency, but also fear. I stayed silent, staring at the door handle. The wood vibrated under his fist, each blow harder than the last. My hands felt damp, the paper edges digging into my skin. Could I trust him now, after his silence at breakfast, after the slip of paper he tried to hide? My throat burned with doubt. Finally, the knocking stopped. Silence stretched in the hallway, long and heavy. I pressed my ear to the door, heart pounding. Nothing. Then faint steps retreating, each one echoing into distance. Relief washed over me, but it was thin, fragile. They would come again. I unsealed the envelope with trembling hands. The flap tore, brittle from age, releasing a faint smell of ink and dust. The will slid out. Pages yellowed, edges curled. My wife's handwriting filled the margins, steady and deliberate. At the bottom, the signature line stared at me, smudged, unfinished. My chest tightened. The ink blurred as if a tear had fallen or a hand had trembled. Without that signature, would anyone believe it? Could it stand in court? My hope wavered like a candle in wind. Still, the words above remained clear. If she dishonors me, she inherits nothing. A crack of thunder rolled outside, shaking the windows. Rain began to patter against the glass, soft at first, then harder, relentless. I spread the pages across my desk, the lamplight casting long shadows. My wife's voice filled my ears as I read. She had seen their arrogance coming long before I did. My fingers traced her words, my nails catching the rough texture of old paper. She wrote of protecting me, of protecting the house, of leaving truth hidden until the right time. My eyes burned, tears threatening. She had trusted me to guard this secret, and I had nearly failed. The house creaked as if listening. I felt the air shift, heavy with storm and memory, and then faintly the sound of a car door slamming outside. My breath caught. Through the rain-specked window, headlights glowed across the yard. A figure moved toward the porch. I stuffed the will back into the envelope, shoving it into the drawer. The wood slid shut with a thud. My hand shook as I grabbed the key, twisting it fast. Just as I pocketed it, the front door rattled under a heavy fist. My daughter's voice rang out sharp and cold. "Dad, we need to talk, now." I stood frozen in my room, staring at the hallway. The storm outside howled, wind rattling the shutters. She knocked again, louder, the door shaking. "Don't make this worse." Her words sliced through me, filled with threat disguised as concern. I opened my mouth to answer, but closed it again. What could I say? That I had her mother's will, that her cruelty already condemned her? My throat closed. My silence grew heavier by the second. She called again, softer now. "We only want what's fair. Fair." The word burned me. Was it fair to strip me bare, to mock me, to set deadlines as if I were their servant? Rage flickered in me, hot and bright. I pressed my fist to the desk, the wood biting into my knuckles. Not fair, never fair. Finally, her footsteps retreated. The sound of the car engine roared, then faded into the storm. I sagged into the chair, my head falling into my hands. The will sat locked in the drawer, but the danger pressed tighter around me. They knew I had something. I lit a candle, its flame small but steady. The smell of melted wax filled the room. My wife's memory hung heavy, her unseen hand guiding me. "Protect it," I whispered aloud. My voice cracked in the stillness. Protect what? The house? My pride? Or her last words? The hours dragged. The storm outside grew wilder, branches scratching against the windows, every sound twisted into threat. I paced the floor, the envelope weighing heavy in my pocket like a stone. My mind churned with doubt and anger. Just past midnight, the phone rang again. The sharp sound jolted me upright. I grabbed the receiver, breath ragged. A man's voice answered this time, calm, cold. Friday, courtroom 4B, 10 o'clock. Bring the deed or we'll make sure the sheriff collects it first. My knees weakened. Courtroom. Sheriff. It wasn't just threats whispered in the dark anymore. They were moving into daylight, into law, turning the world against me. The deadline now carried a place, a judge, an audience. Shame in public, not just in my home. The line went dead. I clutched the receiver, knuckles white, ears ringing. My chest ached, a dull pain spreading. The clock on the wall ticked louder, each second slicing away my courage. I slammed the receiver down, the sound echoing through the empty house. I walked back to the drawer, pulled it open, and stared at the will again. Smudged, incomplete, fragile as dried leaves, but still, it was something. Proof that she saw the danger, proof that dishonor had a price. Was it enough to stand against them? My eyes burned as I folded the pages carefully, sliding them back into the envelope. My wife's name stared up at me, steady, firm. I pressed the paper to my chest, inhaling the faint smell of ink. "Guide me," I whispered. The candle flickered as if in answer. And then, from the silence, a new sound shattered the moment. A hard, sharp rap against the window pane. Once, twice, 3 times. My breath caught. Slowly, I turned my head toward the glass. A shadow loomed outside. Face pressed against the rain-streaked window, the shadow at the window froze me in place. My throat closed, my chest hammered, but I couldn't look away. The glass fogged where his breath touched it, blurred by the rain streaming down. A hand pressed flat against the pane, pale in the stormlight. Then, with deliberate slowness, it tapped again. 3 sharp knocks. I stumbled back, hitting the edge of the desk. The candle guttered, wax spilling down the side. My breath came in short bursts. The shadow lingered, unmoving, watching me through the glass. I couldn't see the face, only the outline, tall and rigid. The storm roared louder, as if urging me to run. Then, just as suddenly, it vanished. The window pane cleared, only streaks of water sliding down. My ears rang in the silence. I waited, heart pounding for another knock. None came. The house groaned in the wind, and the candle flame steadied again. But I knew I hadn't imagined it. I pressed my forehead to the cool glass. The yard lay empty. Shadows stretched across the soaked grass. No footsteps, no figure. Only the faint hum of the rain. My reflection stared back at me, pale, hollow-eyed, lips trembling. For a moment, I didn't recognize myself. The next morning brought no peace. I barely slept, my body heavy, my eyes burning. The knock at the window haunted me. At the kitchen table, the stale smell of yesterday's coffee lingered. I sat with the will hidden in my pocket, my hand brushing its edge like a talisman. The doorbell rang sharply. My heart leapt into my throat. I opened the door slowly, bracing myself. There she was, the wedding planner, clipboard in hand, lips pressed tight. Her raincoat dripped on the porch. She wasted no time. "If you don't confirm by tomorrow, the venue cancels. Deposit gone." Her voice was brisk, businesslike, but her eyes flicked to my hand clutching the door. I felt stripped, exposed. She thrust the clipboard toward me, the papers neat, tidy, merciless. "All you need is your signature," she said. I shook my head, throat too tight to answer. Her gaze dropped to the envelope half visible in my shirt pocket. The will. Her eyebrows lifted slightly, a flicker of curiosity or recognition. My blood chilled. Did she know? Or had she been sent to spy to confirm I had it? I shoved the paper deeper into my pocket. "Tomorrow," she repeated, sharper this time. 9 a.m., no excuses. She turned on her heel, her boots striking the porch hard, splashing through puddles. The sound echoed after her, heavy in the silence she left behind. I shut the door, my hand trembling on the knob. I leaned against the wood, breath shallow. The word tomorrow thudded in my head like a hammer. Each deadline cut closer, tighter, sharper. My chest burned. Could I keep resisting when every door, every window, every knock carried another threat? I went to the drawer, pulled out the will again. My wife's words blurred through tears. I couldn't stop. I pressed the paper to my lips, whispering, "Tell me what to do." The paper smelled faintly of ink and time, grounding me, even as doubt gnawed deeper. I tried to steady myself with small actions. Boiled water, washed the cup, sat by the window. The ordinary tasks felt brittle, fragile, mocked by the chaos around me. Even the ticking of the clock sounded cruel, measuring the hours I didn't control. By late afternoon, Daniel came in. His jacket was damp, his hair plastered to his forehead. He stood in the doorway, eyes darting. "The planner was here?" he asked. I nodded, silent. His jaw tightened and he muttered, "They won't stop, Dad. You're making it worse." My rage flared. "I'm making it worse?" I spat. My voice echoed harshly in the kitchen. "They're tearing this family apart, and you stay quiet." He winced, but his eyes hardened. "Silence keeps us safe," he whispered. Then he walked past me, leaving the smell of wet clothes and fear behind. Night fell heavy. I sat in the dark, the only light the flicker of the lamp. My hand never left the envelope, as if without its weight I'd vanish. The storm had passed, but the silence pressed heavier than thunder. I couldn't shake the feeling of eyes watching me still. Near midnight, the phone rang. I froze, staring at it. My hand hovered before I picked up. A voice I didn't know. Smooth, detached. 9 a.m. tomorrow, last chance. The line cut. I stood there, receiver pressed to my ear, listening to nothing but static and my own heartbeat. Sleep never came. My body ached with exhaustion, but my mind clawed at every sound. Each creak of the floorboards felt like footsteps. Each gust of wind sounded like a whisper. I sat by the locked drawer, guarding it as if it were my life. At dawn, I made tea, but the taste was bitter, metallic. My hand shook so badly I nearly dropped the cup. Outside, the world looked clean after the storm, but inside my chest, rot spread. Tomorrow was here. 9 a.m. I couldn't escape the ticking clock. I thought of Anna again. My granddaughter's laughter, bright and unspoiled, filled my memory. Would she even remember me if they erased me from their lives? Would she grow up hearing only that her grandfather was a dirty mechanic who gave up everything? The thought hollowed me out. I carried the wheel to the porch, the morning air damp and cool. I sat on the step, the paper hidden in my jacket. Birds sang weakly in the distance, but even their song felt fragile. I whispered to the air, "I won't sign, not yet." The words shook, but they were mine. And then I heard it again. 3 knocks. This time, not on the window, not on the front door. From the back door, slow and deliberate, echoing through the house. My skin crawled. Someone wanted me cornered from every side. I rose slowly, the wheel heavy in my pocket, my legs trembling. The sound repeated. 3 steady knocks. My breath caught. The house seemed to hold its breath with me. I turned toward the kitchen, every step heavy, each board groaning beneath me. The back door rattled under a sudden blow, then silence. I froze, my ears strained. And then from the other side of the door, a voice, low, mocking. "Open up, old man. We know what you're hiding." The voice at the back door froze my blood. My legs locked, and I gripped the kitchen chair for balance. The wood felt rough, the air thick with the faint smell of smoke drifting in from outside. I couldn't move. The silence stretched, heavy as stone. Then came the second blow, louder, shaking the door in its frame. "Old man," the voice repeated, clearer now, dripping with scorn. "You have until Friday evening. Sign the property or don't bother showing your face at the wedding." My chest tightened as the words burned into me. They weren't whispers anymore. They were orders carved into my life. I staggered back, the envelope pressing into my ribs beneath the jacket. My hand brushed against it, the paper stiff and fragile, but heavier than iron. This was their target, their obsession, and I was the obstacle. I swallowed hard, my throat raw. Could I resist with nothing but ink and faded signatures? The door rattled once more, then fell silent. I pressed my ear against the wood, straining to hear. Nothing now but the rain dripping from the gutters, steady, almost mocking. Slowly, I slid the bolt across. My hand shook, my nails biting into the metal. The threat had been delivered. When I turned, Daniel stood in the hallway, pale and rigid. His eyes flicked to the door, then back to me. "Who was it?" His voice was sharp, but his face betrayed fear. I didn't answer. His silence grew louder. He stepped closer, his hands clenched. "Dad, if you fight them, you'll lose everything. Don't drag us with you." Anger flared hot inside me. "Everything?" I snapped. I already lost my dignity when she laughed at me. "Do you want me to give them the house too? My soul?" My voice echoed harshly, louder than I intended. Daniel's face tightened, and he turned away, muttering under his breath. I caught only one word, stubborn. I collapsed into the chair, chest heaving. My eyes stung, but no tears came. I pressed my palms together, the skin rough, nails digging into flesh. My wife's memory lingered, whispering of sacrifices made for these children, for this home, for love, and now they wanted to strip it all away. The day dragged, each hour heavier than the last. Shadows crawled across the floor, stretching long as the sun sank. The will sat locked in my drawer, its presence burning in my thoughts. Was it enough to face them, or just another faded page they would mock? By late afternoon, my daughter arrived. She entered without knocking, her perfume flooding the room. She stood tall, lips pressed into a thin line. "Dad," she said sharply, "Friday evening, it's your last chance. Sign it, or don't come." Her eyes held no warmth, only impatience. I stared at her, my mouth dry. "And if I don't?" I asked, voice trembling. She shrugged, cold, casual. "Then you're nothing to us. You'll watch from the street like a beggar." The words cut deep, sharper than knives. She turned to leave, but I forced my voice to rise. "Your mother left something." She stopped, froze for a second, then turned back, slowly. Her eyes narrowed, sharp with suspicion. "What do you mean?" she demanded. My heart pounded. I almost pulled the envelope out, almost showed her the will. But fear held me back. If she saw it, it would vanish, like the folder beneath the floorboard. Instead, I shook my head. "Nothing," I muttered. Her eyes lingered, burning through me, before she stormed out. The door slammed, the sound echoing through the house. The smell of her perfume lingered, bitter in my nostrils, long after she was gone. I slumped in my chair, gripping the armrests until my knuckles turned white. My chest burned with helplessness. Rage had no outlet. Hope felt thin as smoke. I closed my eyes, whispering, "Hold on, just hold on." But the words tasted like lies in my mouth. As night fell, I lit a candle again. Its flame wavered, shadows crawling across the walls. I placed the will on the table, staring at the smudged signature. My wife's name blurred, her voice in my memory faint but firm. Protect it. The paper seemed to pulse with meaning, yet its weakness mocked me. The clock struck 9. A knock rattled the front door, loud and sudden. I jolted upright, heart pounding. Slowly I opened it. My daughter stood there again, but this time she wasn't alone. Behind her, his shadow filled the porch. The fiancé, his smile sharp, cruel. "Friday evening," he said, stepping forward. His cologne filled the air, suffocating, thick. He leaned close, his voice low. "Bring the deed, or lose everything. The sheriff already has the papers ready." My knees weakened. "Sheriff?" The word landed heavy, sealing the threat with law. He straightened, eyes gleaming with victory. My daughter avoided my gaze, lips pressed tight. They turned together, walking into the night. Their footsteps crunched on the gravel, fading, leaving silence behind. I stood frozen at the door, breath shallow. I shut it slowly, sliding the bolt into place. My body trembled as I leaned against the wood. The will lay on the table behind me, silent, fragile. My hand brushed my pocket, feeling the key pressed against my thigh. My wife's last weapon, my last hope. I moved to the table, staring down at the envelope. Fear gnawed at me, but so did a strange fire. They thought me weak. They thought me broken. But her will was still here, breathing in my hands. Could it turn the tide? The candle sputtered, wax dripping onto the table. I leaned closer, whispering into the shadows, "I won't crawl." My voice cracked, but it was louder than yesterday, louder than the silence they forced on me. And then, just as the flame steadied, the phone rang again. My breath caught. I picked it up, heart pounding. A single voice spoke, calm, final. "Tomorrow, 9 sharp. Don't fail us." The line went dead. I stood in the darkness, the will trembling in my hands. My chest burned with dread, but also with a spark of defiance. Friday evening loomed closer, a knife against my throat. And then the candle flickered violently. The front door creaked open on its own. The front door swung open with a groan, though no hand touched it. The night air swept in, carrying the smell of wet earth and something sharper, like tobacco smoke. My heart thudded as I stared at the dark threshold. No figure entered, but the silence pressed heavy, daring me to step outside. I slammed it shut, bolted it fast, and whispered to myself, "Tomorrow. It ends tomorrow." Morning came cold, the sky heavy with gray clouds. My hands shook as I buttoned the only suit I owned, worn but clean. The will sat folded in my jacket pocket, its edges stiff against my chest. Every step I took felt like a march toward judgment. Friday, the day they chose to strip me in front of everyone. At the church, whispers buzzed the moment I entered. Heads turned, eyes narrowing, lips moving. I felt their stares like needles in my skin. "That's him," someone muttered. "The mechanic." My ears burned, my throat tight. Shame and anger tangled in my chest, pressing down on every breath. Daniel stood near the aisle, his hands jammed in his pockets, eyes lowered. He didn't greet me, didn't even look at me. My daughter glowed at the altar, her dress gleaming under the dim lights. She smiled, but not at me, only at him, the man beside her, smug and tall, already victorious. The pastor cleared his throat, calling for silence. My heart pounded louder than his voice. I walked forward, each step echoing against the stone floor. Murmurs rippled through the pews. I reached the front, pulled the envelope from my pocket, and placed it on the pulpit. The sound was louder than I expected, a slap against wood. Gasps filled the room. My daughter's face drained of color. The fiancé sneered, his smile faltering just enough to show fear beneath. The pastor looked down, his brows furrowing as he unfolded the document. The paper trembled in his hands, the old ink glistening under the light. "I hold her mother's will," I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside, "and it speaks of honor, of shame, of consequence." My throat burned, but I pushed the words out. The church grew still, every breath held. I wasn't invisible now. Every eye was fixed on me. The pastor's voice carried as he read aloud, "If she dishonors her father in public, she forfeits everything." The words rang through the church, heavy as bells. My daughter's lips parted, her hands clutching her bouquet so tightly the flowers bent. The fiancé's face twisted, rage breaking through his mask. Daniel stepped forward, his voice shaking. "Dad, stop, please, this isn't the way." His eyes darted between me and his sister, but his plea couldn't drown the weight of the pastor's words. The crowd shifted, whispers rising like wind. The truth had landed, and it cut deep. I stood taller, though my knees trembled. For the first time in years, I wasn't begging. I wasn't silent. I was a father demanding dignity. My hands shook, but I let them see. Let them know my strength came not from silence, but from survival. The fiancé slammed his fist against the pew, the sound sharp, violent. "This changes nothing," he spat, his voice echoing, but the eyes around him told another story. Doubt crept in, gnawing at his certainty. The crowd had seen, the crowd had heard. The pastor folded the will slowly, placing it on the pulpit with care. His gaze moved from me to my daughter, then back again. His voice was calm, but firm. "The document is clear. A choice was made long before today." His words cut deeper than any shout. My daughter's face crumpled. Tears welled, her mascara smudging. She shook her head, whispering, "No, it can't be." Her bouquet slipped from her hands, petals scattering across the floor. The sound of their fall was soft, but in the silence it thundered. I swallowed hard, my chest aching. A part of me longed to comfort her, to gather her in my arms. But the memory of her laughter, "My dad shames me," stabbed fresh. Love and pain tangled, tearing me apart. My lips trembled, but no words came. Daniel's hand gripped my arm suddenly. His whisper cut close. "Dad, you've gone too far. They'll hate you forever." His breath smelled of coffee and fear. I turned to him, eyes burning, and said only, "Then let them." My voice cracked, but it was louder than his. The crowd murmured louder now, some with pity, some with scorn, some with approval. The air buzzed with judgment, with shifting sides. My daughter sobbed, her shoulders shaking, while the fiancé clenched his fists, his face red with fury. I felt the weight of every eye. The shame they had tried to bury me with was now theirs to share. My chest swelled with a strange, painful pride. I was no longer silent, no longer invisible. I was a father standing in the open, scars and all. The fiancé suddenly stepped forward, his voice booming. "This man is nothing, a liar, a fraud." His hand shot out toward the will, as if to tear it apart. But the pastor slammed his palm down, stopping him cold. The wood cracked under the force. Gasps filled the room again. The pastor's voice rose, steady as stone. "This document holds authority, and until challenged in court, it stands." His eyes locked on mine, giving the faintest nod. A flicker of support, of recognition. My chest tightened with gratitude. For the first time, someone else saw me. The fiancé backed away, seething, his breath ragged. My daughter covered her face, her sobs echoing. Daniel stood frozen, torn between us all, his silence louder than any scream. The church was no longer their stage. It was mine. I turned, facing the crowd, my voice breaking but firm. I was mocked. I was shamed. But I will not be erased. My words echoed, filling the vaulted ceiling, reverberating through stone and air. My heart raced, but my spine stayed straight. And then, from the back of the church, a new sound. The heavy tread of boots. The doors swung open. The sheriff entered, hat in hand, eyes scanning the room. His voice cut through the murmurs. "I need to speak with the father of the bride." The sheriff's boots echoed on the church floor, slow, heavy, each step rattling my chest. Whispers rippled through the pews, rising and falling like restless waves. He stopped beside me, his presence filling the silence. His hand rested on his belt, the leather creaking as he drew a folded paper from his pocket. My heart clenched, expecting the worst. He opened it carefully, eyes scanning the lines. Then he lifted his head, his voice steady. "I've been handed documents claiming the father agreed to surrender his property. But these signatures," he paused, tapping the page, "they don't match. They're forged." The word cut like a blade, slicing the room in half. Gasps broke out across the church. My daughter froze, her sobs caught in her throat. The fiancé's face drained of color, his smugness collapsing in an instant. Daniel's eyes widened, darting to me, to the sheriff, then to the floor. The pastor stood silent, his gaze sharp, steady, waiting. The sheriff held the forged papers high for all to see. "This is fraud, and fraud carries weight. If anyone here push this, they'll answer for it." His voice carried the authority of iron, the kind that leaves no room for lies. I felt my knees weaken, but pride surged with equal force. At last, truth was no longer mine alone. The fiancé stepped forward, blustering. "This is a mistake." But the sheriff cut him short with a raised hand. "Quiet. Your time will come." The authority in his tone silenced even the whispers in the crowd. The fiancé's jaw clenched, his fists balled, but he said nothing more. His arrogance had cracked. My daughter stumbled toward me, mascara streaked across her face. Her voice was hoarse, broken. "Dad, I didn't know. I swear I didn't." Her hands reached for me, trembling. For a second, my heart almost gave in. I saw the little girl who once clung to my arm at night, whispering secrets into the dark. But memory clashed with truth. Her laughter, mocking me behind closed doors, echoed sharp and merciless. The words, "dirty mechanic," still stung like fresh wounds. I turned my face away, my chest heavy with both love and pain. My silence was answer enough. She fell to her knees, sobbing. The pastor cleared his throat, lifting my wife's will from the pulpit. His voice was solemn. "This will stands until proven otherwise, and by its words, dishonor has cost her everything." His tone rang final, the sound of a gavel without wood or metal. The church grew still once more. The fiancé's family shifted uncomfortably in the pews, whispers hissing. Their power had slipped, crumbling before their eyes. They looked at me now, not with disdain, but with unease, some even with fear. I stood taller, the weight of years lifting, even as tears threatened to fall. The sheriff stepped closer, his voice quieter, for me alone. "You've been wronged, but you're not alone anymore." His hand rested briefly on my shoulder, steady, grounding. I swallowed hard, my throat tight, and nodded. My wife's will pressed against my chest, warm now, as if alive. Daniel approached, his steps hesitant, his eyes shone with shame. "Dad," he whispered, "I should have spoken sooner. I was afraid." His voice cracked, and his shoulders sagged. For the first time in days, his mask of silence broke. My heart twisted, torn between anger and relief. I placed a hand on his arm, rough and calloused. "Fear makes cowards of us all," I said softly. "But today, we stood." His eyes filled with tears, and he lowered his head. My anger loosened, but forgiveness would take longer. Still, a seed of hope stirred. The pastor handed the will back to me, his gaze firm. "Guard this well. It carries more than law. It carries truth." The paper crackled in my hands, its scent of old ink and time sharp in my nose. I nodded, clutching it close. This fragile object had turned their power upside down. My daughter still wept on the floor, her bouquet scattered around her like fallen promises. The fiancé glared, his face twisted in rage, but powerless now. The sheriff's presence pinned him like a shadow under sunlight. Justice had caught him, if only for a moment. I stepped forward, turning to face the crowd. My voice shook, but I forced it steady. They laughed at me. They tried to erase me. But I stand here, still a father, still a man. My chest swelled, each word striking harder than the last. Silence held for a moment, then murmurs rose, some nodding, some ashamed, some hushed. The truth had been spoken aloud, and it could not be stuffed back into shadows. My shame had turned into their mirror, and they could no longer look away. The pastor ended the ceremony, his voice solemn. "Let this day be a lesson. Honor is not given. It is lived." His words echoed in the vaulted ceiling, lingering like a prayer. I stood rooted, the weight of the moment pressing down and lifting me at once. As the crowd dispersed, I remained. The pews emptied, footsteps fading, whispers dissolving. My daughter was led away, her sobs still heavy. The fiancé muttered curses, his family dragging him out. Only Daniel lingered, his eyes fixed on me, lost but searching. When the church grew still, I lowered myself onto a bench. My body felt heavy, my hands trembling. The will lay in my lap, the ink blurred but alive. I thought of my wife, her laughter, her steady hands. I whispered, I protected it. I protected us. Tears slid down my cheeks, hot and bitter, but for the first time, they weren't from shame. They were from release. I had carried the weight of their contempt, but I hadn't bent. My chest ached, but with pride, not despair. Outside, bells tolled faintly, marking the hour. The air was cool, carrying the scent of rain washed clean. I rose, steady now, walking into the light. My shadow stretched long across the ground, but it was mine. I no longer hid from it. I turned back once, looking at the church. Its doors stood wide, open, unyielding. My voice was low, almost a whisper. What would you have done in my place? The question hung in the air, unanswered, but alive. If you've made it this far, tell me in the comments, would you have signed or would you have resisted? I want to read your truth, and if this story moved you, subscribe, because my family's secrets don't end here, and the next one may cut even deeper.